there in Tel Aviv, Ms. Schwarzbard, because the entire controversy now is building over how did this blast take place. The Israelis are claiming this was an Islamic Jihad missile that was misfired. The Palestinians are insisting that this was an Israeli airstrike. Amidst these claims and counterclaims, the fact is hundreds of people have lost their lives. How do you see it?
So first of all, good evening from Jerusalem, Rajdeep. Thank you so much for having me here today. Before we start our conversation, I want to thank the millions of Indian viewers who are watching us and have shown their support for the state of Israel in the past 2 weeks. It means a lot. I noticed on the byline of this specific report, it discusses a mystery blast. This blast is not a mystery. We have the receipts. We have multiple forms of proof, that point to the fact that this rocket was launched by Islamic Jihad. It was a misfire that eventually fell on the hospital in the Gaza Strip. Israel doesn't have experience targeting hospitals. You know who does? Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. Last week, the Islamic Jihad and the Hamas launched another rocket at an Israeli hospital in southern Israel, targeting a maternity ward, and I'm not seeing enough people speaking about that.
While you're saying that, let's just look at how the Palestinians are seeing it. They're claiming they do not have the wherewithal to launch such a strike, according to them, that would have caused such a blast. A. B. They're citing an Israeli official posting on Twitter, now X, which was later deleted, claiming that Israeli forces thought the hospital was a Hamas base or Hamas was using it as a base. How do you respond to this propaganda war that seems to be going on? The Palestinians are saying, why would we blast our own hospital?
So it's not a propaganda war. It's fact and it's fiction, okay? We have multiple forms of proof, including a conversation between senior Hamas operatives discussing the misfire. We have a video which shows the rocket being launched and the rocket misfiring in the air. And in addition to that, there are also images from Hamas's official Telegram account circulating, which suggest that they launched a rocket at Tel Aviv at 7 p.m., exactly around the time of the misfiring. So there's fact and there's fiction. The Palestinians can say whatever they like. We have the receipts. We've posted those receipts. Those receipts have been circulating all over the internet. And I encourage your viewers to go and look at them themselves.
The Palestinians may be saying what they are, but it's not just the Palestinians, Tamar. As you've seen, the entire Arab world is up in arms. There are protests across the Arab world. The Jordanians cancelled a summit with the US president in Amman, and there have been street protests in Ramallah and the West Bank as well. 3 days of mourning declared. Do you get a sense that this could therefore be, is this embarrassing despite your claims that this is not an Israeli airstrike, this is a misfired Palestinian record, if the Arab world continues to believe the Palestinian version?
I think it's an embarrassment to the individuals who decided to jump the gun and defame and dehumanize Israel without having the facts. The hypocrisy is astounding. It took days where people were debating how 40 Israeli babies were murdered, whether they were beheaded, whether they were burned alive, whether they were just butchered, and we showed them the evidence. But it took just 1 minute before even the facts were put out for individuals to say that Israel was responsible for this blast, even though now we have the images that prove otherwise.
Let me for a moment turn also to Mr. Kugelman, because the fact is you had Joe Biden there in Israel at the moment. The first time a US president is there at a time of war. Mr. Kugelman, has America pitched all its eggs in Israel's basket, or will the deaths in the hospital blast change the narrative that is playing out of Israel being seen as the sole victim and Hamas as the terror organization responsible for those horrific deaths of October 7th?
Well, I think so. We don't know at this point who is responsible for this horrific attack, but the scale of the tragedy after more than a week of so many horrific tragedies suggests that this tragedy will be a seminal moment. And indeed, we have seen already in a number of capitals in the Middle East protests breaking out, targeting Israel, targeting the United States. We have seen protesters outside of the Israeli embassy in Amman, in Jordan. And I do think that this attack mean, let's be very clear. Many, if not most people in the Middle East, certainly in the Arab world and in Iran, think that Israel was behind this attack. And I think it's going to make it very difficult for there to be effective regional diplomacy. President Biden is in the region. He has wanted to hold meetings with his allies in the region, not just in Israel. But I think at this point that Jordan, Egypt, other countries will really not be comfortable engaging with the United States and potentially Israel, given just how serious this crisis has been. And these are countries in the region that are in many cases not democracies, but they do worry about issues of public order and internal stability. And I think that they worry that if their leaders are meeting with President Biden, if they're talking to the Israelis, that could cause even bigger and perhaps even violent protests on the streets of these Arab capitals and elsewhere across the Middle East.
But does the Biden administration, Michael, have any leverage at all to push for an end, at least to the Israeli siege, let's say, in Gaza that's led to a humanitarian catastrophe? Or do they have any leverage with the Arab states in ending the hostage crisis?
Yes, I mean, each day that goes on suggests that de-escalation will be more difficult, quite frankly, and particularly after this horrific attack on the hospital in Gaza. And again, this is a moment when you really need to have effective regional diplomacy. And President Biden has decided to travel to the region himself to try to lead those regional diplomatic efforts. But there is so much anger right now against Israel and against the United States in Israel's neighborhood that I think it's going to be all the more difficult to have some type of diplomatic outcome that could succeed in lowering temperatures and easing tensions. I think at this point, the biggest priority for everyone should be ensuring that humanitarian aid gets into Gaza. And I think that will definitely be a priority for President Biden during his trip in the region.